Hi, everyone. I'm Andy Bonham, Senior Distinguished Engineer at Capital One, and today we're going to talk about creating a platform community of practice. A little bit about me. I've been at Capital One for over 22 years. I have a number of interests, including microservices, reactive architectures, open source BPM, along with platforms. And platforms we're going to talk a little bit more about today, um, specifically with a community of practice and how that can add benefit to your organization. A little bit about Capital One first is we are a bank built like a tech company. Um, we have invested very heavily in technology and we're all in on the public cloud like no other bank that's out there. Our in-house technology team is close to about 11,000 folks, 85% which are engineers. And we also have an advanced DevOps pipeline that enables our engineers to innovate at the top of the tech stack. We also are big into open source. In 2014, we made a open source first declaration when we made our first contributions to the open source community. We also have over 40 open source projects that we've created ourselves. A couple of the common ones you can see there. Hygia is an often popular one with the DevOps dashboard. And so we're big into using open source, creating open source, and also contributing back to open source. You want to learn more about Capital One, check out our Capital One Tech blog site. There's a number of interesting articles out there and stories. Also, if you're interested in joining Capital One, definitely reach out to the Capital One Career site. And you can also follow us on Twitter at Capital One Tech. So what are we going to cover today? First, we're going to give just a general overview of platforms, why they're important in the industry right now. And then we'll talk about some of the challenges that companies often run into in moving to a platform mindset. And then how a platform community of practice can help you in that migration to a platform mindset. Some of the benefits the COP can provide, and also share some best practices that we've learned along the way. So often companies will have a situation similar to what you see on this slide, where there's multiple applications that are siloed. And some of these applications may have capabilities that exist in the other application. And this creates duplication, right? And they may not even know that the capabilities are duplicated in the other application. Sometimes this, or often this is related to Conway's Law, which basically says we create applications that represent our organizational structure. So if our organization is siloed, often we create applications that are siloed as well. Platforms, on the other hand, take the capabilities that are common across those applications and provide them as foundational capabilities. And they enable consumers to build applications on top of the platform. And they provide a way to bring together producers and consumers in an ecosystem and ultimately enables a number of benefits. But that's where the platform comes into play. Is instead of having those siloed applications that have capabilities, you take those business capabilities and build them on top of a foundational platform that provides those foundational capabilities. Some of the benefits that you get with platforms, right, is faster time to market because you have the foundational capabilities. Teams can build quicker and not have to recreate a siloed application. You're also reusing those capabilities, right, and not duplicating them. So there's cost savings. And then there's certain things that you can enforce and standardize across the platform, such as resiliency and security and a number of other things to make sure each thing that's built on there follows that same pattern. And the other big one is, again, bringing together the producers and consumers, right, in that collaborative environment where they can now innovate with each other, where they can build additional applications or contribute to the platform and add additional capabilities. And that really unlocks the true power that you may not know where it'll go when you create the platform, but when you open the doors for both of those parties to collaborate, it can go pretty far. Getting to that platform mindset can be challenging, especially if you're coming from the siloed application view. Um, Often if you're purely focused on speed and innovation without a focus on reuse, that does tend to create duplicate capabilities, right? Where if you're not looking across in trying to connect the dots and seeing what things you can reuse before you build something new, uh, you will fall into the trap of duplicating things. And it really requires collaboration and exploration, right? Looking at someone else's code to say, hey, is this something we can reuse as part of our effort? And maybe it doesn't work 100% to what you need it to do, but can you contribute to it or extend it so that way you're still getting a benefit over creating something completely from scratch? And then there can also be an aspect of just giving up control, right? When you're reusing something else that you didn't build, you don't have full control of that. But the way you can um, still contribute and enhance it is by an inner sourcing type model or a contribution model, right? Where you can contribute and fix things and have a way to contribute to the underlying code. And then connecting to that macro view, connecting the dots across an organization, right? Instead of having a siloed view of just focused on your vertical problem, connecting the dots to understand what are the things that are out there that we could make part of a platform that have core foundational capabilities that really could be reused by a lot of other applications. So that shift in mindset is, these are some of the common challenges. Now, how can a community of practice help influence this, right? Um, I like this quote by William Turner. You may have heard of it: "Birds of a feather flock together." Right? Basically, beings of a similar type or interest come together and associate. And that's really what a community of practice is, right? A community of practice is an organized group of people that have passion about a particular topic that come together and they share ideas, experiences, and best practices. And you can take that framework and apply it to platforms, right? Bring together people that have a common passion on platforms, that have problems that they need to solve. And they may have already solved some of those problems, or they're passionate about solving them. And bringing that group together can be really valuable for the rest of the organization. Um, they also can act like force multipliers, right? Where maybe they're a representative of a certain division in a company. They can then go back to their area and advocate for certain best practices that the community of practice comes up with, and help lead those other areas through the platform mindset change curve. Um, Often COPs too will avoid, just through the collaboration. Folks will say, "Hey, how did you solve for this? Here's a pattern you can use," and going back to that reuse point, you're avoiding reinventing the wheel. And also, it provides a safe place where you can debate ideas around how things should be done or where they should reside. And often, those ideas would go down the route of how can we enhance this, or maybe this is an additional capability we could add to this platform. And those identify opportunities for inner sourcing and extending some of the existing things. Ultimately, you want the COP to provide tangible results, right? Like that's how it adds value, um, and moves the needle towards the platform journey. A couple best practices if you're standing up a platform community of practice. One of the first things you want to do is create strategic objectives for this community of practice. Understand what's the problem you're trying to solve, and strategically, what are the objectives you're trying to achieve. And make sure you get executive sponsorship for this, right? So it's not just a bottom up, but a top down. Because when that sponsorship is there, that'll help with participation. When folks know that, hey, this executive cares about this, uh, they know that it's something that is valued, right? Um, you also, when you're creating the COP, you'll be faced with the challenge of, okay, well, who do we include? And my recommendation there is be overly inclusive, right? Include not just technical folks, but your product org, other areas, anyone that's interested and has a passion on platforms, um, you know, bring them together, because the more diverse views you have, the better, you know, the better results you'll end up with. You might need to start with a smaller group to get it started, and then extend outward later on. But the more inclusive you can be, the better results you'll get. And then as those different folks come together in the COP and they have ideas around, problems they need to solve and best practices they want to create, it's good to create a backlog of these things and manage that backlog, and then have clearly documented problem statements for those, because that takes us to the next step of, getting the actual work done, right? Where you want to have the COP enable the members of the community of practice, where it's not just one person doing all the work, that you've enabled everyone to volunteer and lead driving certain backlog items. That's really how you make this scalable. If it's just one person driving it, the COP can kind of, it hinges really around that one person, and often may not uh, live on too long. But as you can empower others, give them the opportunity to lead and drive those different backlog items, that's what really helps make it successful. The other thing is, you want to keep the COP topics intriguing, right? Talking about the hot topic things that people care about. Avoid the status update trap, um, because at that point, folks will tend to tune out, right? Like, you don't have to have a forum to get status updates; you can get that offline. But where you want to have the rich conversation is around the things that are top of mind of the members, around the platform problems, the needs that they have, the things that they want to review that they're working on from the best practices, and then just spreading awareness, right? Like, making sure people are aware of it, sharing the work that they're working on, and that tends to have a feedback effect, right? Where more people want to opine on certain topics or help contribute, because it'll help solve their problem as well. So these are some of the tips that we've experienced that I wanted to share with this group. Um, there's a number of additional resources to some of the topics I mentioned earlier. You can go out there. These are on that Capital One tech site around microservices and open source. So feel free to go out there and read those as well. And I believe that is it for now. We're going to take questions since this is a pre-recorded session. We'll do it live during the conference in June. And I thank you very much for your time.